Hello, this is Deborah Clay, author of The Borrowed Boy and Just Be, and presenter of Castaway Books. Each week I invite an author to tell me about the books that have inspired their life and influenced their writing. This week's guest is Mary Schmidt. Hello, I'm delighted today to welcome Mary Schmidt to the island, my Castaway Book Island, because I've met Mary on Twitter and other social media sites. Mary has written so many books. She is such a prolific writer and has written in different names, and I'm sure the books will all come out through discussion. Multi-award winning author, When Angels Fly, which was one of your earlier books for adults, which is based on a memoir, was a multi-award winning book. And you've also written a number of children's books, educational books, which is very interesting about issues affecting children, such as inappropriate touching and bullying. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that. We hear about your life and what inspired you to write these books. And a lovely series on the squirrel books. So we started talking about all the books that Mary had written. And then we got onto the art books, the coffee table books, and there were so many because she's such a prolific writer. I thought it best for Mary to talk about her life and introduce the motivation for writing as we go through. Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Where are you speaking from, Mary? Because I'm in UK, in England, and where are you?
I'm actually in the middle of Kansas in the United States. I'm in Central Standard Time. And my husband and I are here a good part of the year, and we also spend the rest of the year in Colorado.
Excellent.
We have a place out there in Lakewood.
I've visited Colorado. I haven't visited Kansas.
We have a place in a suburb of Denver.
Oh, and I've been to Denver. Mm-hmm. I'm quite well traveled around the States, but I've never been to Kansas.
Yeah, you just flew over it.
I'll have to stop by one day. I love the fact that I get to talk to people from all over the world that otherwise I would only know through names on social media. It's fantastic. It's a great privilege. So dying to hear all about your life and stories, because we were born of the same era, but opposite different sides of the ocean. And your experiences and what you were listening to and reading are quite different to mine, your perspective, although we were born in a similar era. So shall we start straight off and go straight into your first choice?
Okay. Well, my first choice for book one was Little House in the Big Woods by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And I chose that one because, well, I was always a reader. I read everything. I mean, from Green Eggs and Ham to Little Black Sambo to all these different things, I always read as a kid. But Little House in the Big Woods and that entire series really stayed with me. It stuck with me. It made me realize how different my life was from those who lived generations ago. And at 9 years old in 1969, the differences made me reflect on what I had going for me, because I had things that they didn't have back then. And it made me realize that I needed to be thankful for what I did have. Mm-hmm. The hardships and the happy times and the simple things in life, those things that were in the book, made me realize that all struggles, humans have struggles. Everybody has a struggle. No human is accepted from having struggles. Some just have more struggles than others, and that's different. Mm-hmm. But nobody has a perfect life in the past or even now. And so my perspective about life in general changed even at age 9.
Mm. So these books were what the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, The Little House on the Prairie, which is televised, wasn't it? Just to remind people.
Actually, I don't think it had come out yet. It may have, but we only had 3 channels on TV at that time. So mine was more books when I was at that age. Also, in 1969, my older brother was drafted into the Army. Mm-hmm. He did his basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then he went to Fort Hood, Texas. And then he was getting ready to go out on a flight to Vietnam.
Mm.
And he was actually in line, duffel bag and everything, and he was pulled to the side. And he was given an honorable discharge to go back home because the family of 9 and my father was older when he married my mother, so he had, he was 20 years older, and he couldn't keep up with everything at that time. So my older brother was sent back, Joe was sent back, and he went to work at a grocery store in town to help bring in food and resources for those kids, for all of us. So
tell me, how many of you were there at that time? How many of children were there?
There were 9 of us.
Right.
9. And that was a time of hippies and flower children and all these long hair. And I'd see a guy riding off on a bicycle, and I'd think, okay, that's a girl. No, it's a guy. He's got all this long hair and everything. School life was really simple. It was much simpler. I mean, you had actual blackboards and chalk, but it was just different. My clothes, usually most of my clothes came from my sister, who's a year older. They were hand-me-down. And I don't know, I just read books because it was escapism for me, and it was adventure. And I could read about other things that I was interested in, and I could read about things that I didn't know I was interested in and find out I was, and then I would do other books off of that. So it was just a great time for me.
It's interesting. You said as a child, you were able to think about, gratitude and how you had a lot compared to these pioneers coming over in the days of this, it was being written about in The Little House in the Big Woods. But that was quite deep thinking for a child. I mean, you had your brother came back to earn money for the family, and there were 9 of you living together. Did you feel hardship at that age? Were you aware that you had less, or what brought you to that realization reading that book? Because it seems a very mature thought for a child.
My clothes were hand-me-downs. I rarely had anything new bought. Shoes were hand-me-downs. My younger brother, he's the only one that had new clothes, and I knew that. My friends had new clothes. They had Barbie dolls, and I had a Barbie doll, but I didn't have any high heel shoes for her or any of that kind of thing because that wasn't affordable. I knew it from the get-go. I knew that we didn't have the money. I remember every year, in order to my parents would go and refinance the house, or every other year they would go and refinance the house so that they could buy school clothes and everything, do all the tuition and everything for the kids. So when you're in a vehicle and you know that they're refinancing so that they can send their kids to school, even at that age, you know there's a struggle going on.
Did you want to be like the girl in the book?
I thought that would be fun. I could picture myself doing some of that. There's a point in different books where there's a little bit about Indians, and I could thought, okay, and I can picture myself doing that too, because I have some Cherokee Indian in me. So I was like, okay, I have another connection there. But then I thought about the long sleeve dresses and how they wore them throughout the year. And I was like, okay, I can't do that. I cannot wear that kind of clothes in the summer in the heat and humidity. No.
No.
So I had my limits.
So should we go on to your next book?
Sure.
Your second choice book was?
By the way, on the first books, the Little House books, I read them all a lot more than once. That's the way it is. And that's the same thing happened with my next book. So I read the Nancy Drew book series, and I read them in order. Now, they always say they're by Carolyn Keene, but there's actually several writers that were in on that. And I started reading the Nancy Drew books when I was about 10 years old in 1970. I would read and reread it. Mysteries, they made me curious. I decided that I was Nancy Drew. I had the nice clothes. I had a dad who people knew. I had a best friend in Bess. I had a best friend in George, who's also a female, for those who don't know. And so I was trying to work out mysteries. So I had these nice clothes, which were much better than my hand-me-downs. And I thought I could be a sleuth and find out and solve mysteries. But, you know, when I was older, I thought, okay, this is what I want to do in life. I want to be somebody who can figure out and solve all these mysteries, but that never did happen. But what did happen is I was made more aware of my surroundings, actually. And it helped me to keep me safer as a child and as I was growing up. And it helped me to help out my younger siblings to make sure that they were safe, you know, because even then I would be wary of. Back then, parents would be talking and you can hear something, you know, and you can overhear something, and then one worries about it. Or you could hear the worry, you can tell that they're worried about a certain situation. And so then I would be more watchful for my own younger siblings, because that's the way it was back then.
Where did you come in the order of children, age-wise? Were you one of the oldest?
I'm the third. Now my older brother, he's 8 years older. And then no more kids for 7 years until another one, my sister, and then me. And then all the others follow me.
So you were watchful and you were noticing things with your parents. Was it were there problems going on with your parents, or was it just?
Oh, there were some problems with my parents too. Little did I know at the time, but they were going to end up being divorced, but it didn't happen then. But there was a lot of protesting going on because of the Vietnam War, and my mother was always writing op-eds for the papers, and she was writing letters. It seemed like she had a letter to the editor or editorial almost every day in the local paper, and it was crazy. And I was thinking about all the prisoner of wars and the ones that are missing in action, and I didn't understand why we couldn't get them rescued. It was just, everything was going on. And we only had 3 channels, 12, 10, and 2. That was all we had. And 10 was pretty iffy. So we really had 2 channels on the TV. So it was always in the news. Everything was like that in the news. And I remember seeing napalm. And that hit me hard, because that was like, okay, it's like pouring flames. It's literally pouring flames onto people who, some of them were innocent children and everything. And that bothered me a great bit. I did not understand why children had to be hurt and killed in the process of fighting in this war that everyone was saying we can't win. It's not a winnable war. Why are we even there? We shouldn't be there. And that was just
very frightening for a child, isn't it? Very frightening for a child, because it must have been all around you, people's brothers, fathers, uncles, sons, all involved in it, and talking about it all the time. Very disturbing at that age, because you were adult enough to make sense of it, but not perhaps deal with the emotions from it.
Exactly. And so then I went back to my books to read. And then I also started listening to music. And we had some 45 little records. And so I listened a lot to the Beatles and the Monkees and all of that. We had bell-bottom pants, denim bell-bottom jeans. And
I wore them. I used to cut up these seams and then put in my V and sew it in. So it's flared pants.
That is what, I used to do some of that too. I took actually pants that my older brother had cast away. This is going to sound crazy, but like they could have been of velvet type material or something. And I would sew and make them to my size and give them the flair.
Yeah. We used to
That's
call them
funny.
loon pants, Loon, loon. Did you call them that in the States? Loon pants. And some had embroidery all up the sides as well. Very fancy.
Some did, but mine did not because we didn't have that kind of money. So that didn't happen. We also, I know that my older sister and I, we also had pants that were double knit fabric and bell bottoms.
Yeah.
It was like, I was really happy when double knit fabric went away. Oh man, I did not like double knit.
So
And then,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you were listening to the Beatles and the Monkees. I must admit, around the 70s, early 70s, I was into David Cassidy. So did you miss all of that crush on Donny Osmond, the Osmonds and everything? You were cool if you were into the Beatles and Monkees and not the idols.
I liked Ringo. I liked Ringo Starr, okay? And I liked Davy Jones. Donny Osmond was fine, but I wanted somebody that was a little older. So I didn't do so much towards him. But again, we had the big three channels too that were pretty much all the time. So there was a lot of Lawrence Welk and things like that. My mother never missed the Lawrence Welk show. So if they had a guest, we got to watch. If they didn't, whatever their guest was, it was our choice, if we wanted to watch or not. So that's what we did.
Okay, so should we go on to your third book?
Okay. Well, that's the Sherry Ames, and that's a smaller book series, and it was a very different book series for me. They deals with the hospital setting, and she becomes a nurse, and it made me realize that I could do more as a woman at age 11, that I could do more when I grew up, that I could be a nurse when I grew up, and I could possibly marry a doctor. I had all these visions that kids get in their heads, and books helped. And I realized that I could help people as a nurse, and I fell in love with that ideal. I truly did. So, and then at the same time, Julia was a television show on at that time. Diane Carroll was the star. She was an African-American woman playing the part of a nurse. And I was impressed. And I thought, okay, nursing is what I want to do that. I want to be a nurse. This is my thing. And I did become a registered nurse.
Excellent.
And although I haven't worked in that profession since January of 2013, I had a very long profession with it. So, and I did like helping others, and I did like the science and everything about it. And I liked the humanity and the connections, and just knowing that you helped someone, whether it was something small or bigger, but you helped them and you knew they appreciated it. And I wasn't afraid to cry with families because that's me. I wasn't afraid to let them see my humanity because that's being human. And there are three different kinds of nurses in the world. The first one is the clinical, do it by the book, try not to show any, be stoic, show no feeling. Another one is, it's always the bottom line, the cost factor. And then there's the one that's in the middle, who, yeah, you can do something by the book, but you can also do it a different way, and it's more
from the heart.
Yeah, that's where I fit in.
Do you know, I worked in the NHS for 20 years. I trained as an occupational therapist, and then I was a hospital manager. But all of my working career has been health and social care. And like you, it's the compassion. And whether I'm retired or whatever, I will always have that, because that is who I am, the connection. But I think that there is a danger, exactly as you said. Some people who work in healthcare can end up removing themselves so far from the situation, withdrawing, the humanity, because they don't want to get too involved. And that is when you get things that go on in hospitals that shouldn't, when people stop respecting the dignity and treating people as people. And most nurses don't, but you do occasionally get that, especially some of the unqualified staff, I'm afraid. And it's, because I've had to deal with a lot about abuse in hospitals, because that was my job, to investigate it. And I think it can happen, and it's very, very sad.
It can happen, and it does happen. And I know that in the course of my career, there were times that I spoke up about it. One time, this is off a little bit, but one time I had somebody and she came to work and she was not on this planet. And I could tell from her eyes and her actions that she was very unsafe to be around any of the patients. Mm-hmm. And I was the one in charge. So I told her she was to leave, clock out and leave. And she didn't want to. And I said, you will clock out and leave. Your work here is done for today. And then she did. And I locked the front door. I locked it because I didn't know what she would do. Then I went and I called my director. And I said, this is what happened. This is what I did. The next day, she tried to get, my director tried to get a urine test from the woman. And they spent like an hour and a half trying to get that. And she couldn't do it. And so she was fired. Mm-hmm. Okay. But she was very high and flighty. And the patients and everybody could tell that she was very unsafe. Mm-hmm. And so you get that too.
And you also get staff who are overtired themselves. They're stretching themselves too far. If you're working with people who are challenging, it can be very stressful. But a good manager like you, as you were, is able to see that, recognize that, and support the staff and make sure that they are not having that contact when they need to have that space.
I did, actually, in that particular incident and others where there weren't even incidents. I did help because, here I am. This is one person now short. We're now one person down. We don't have anybody coming in. We have no one we can call. So I'm going to be doing a lot of the CNA work, and my charting will wait until the end of the shift.
What does CNA mean?
Certified Nurse's Aide. So I would do a lot of, they're the nursing helper. The helper to the nurse. Mm-hmm. And so I would help them with a lot of their work, so that all the patients could get settled and everything and be nice and clean and all of that. And I would let my charting wait until the end of the shift, and then I would finish up my charting.
Mm-hmm. You obviously enjoyed your career in nursing, but what
I loved it.
What took you out of it?
I became sick.
Oh.
I had a lack of oxygen, brain injury happen, and I ended up with a neuroendocrine tumor and had to have a lung removed, and just a lot of different health things hit me all at the same time, pretty much. I had to have my heart repaired. I couldn't do the nursing anymore. I had to wear oxygen. I was actually on 6 liters at one point. I'm now down to 4. But you can't, it's kind of hard to work as a nurse if you're wearing oxygen. Even if you're at a desk and maybe you're writing orders or something, but if there's something that's happening, your first reaction is to get up and go. And that you can't do that and wear oxygen. I've had patients come into the hospitals and I mean, patient would try to use your oxygen tubing or strangle you. I've had one try to strangle me with my stethoscope before, and of course she didn't remember it because she had taken something that was really bad. And so she was tripping. So she ended up actually in leathers and leather restraints, and into the ICU was the rest of her stay. I remember when she was doing that with my stethoscope, and all I could do is I could just barely get my finger in, and then I could pull on the rubber and I could breathe again. So that was, that there can be scary situations going on because
Which
when you
areas
have
do you specialize in?
what did I specialize in?
Yeah, which sort of patients were you working with?
Okay, well, I worked in a lot of categories. I worked in a lot of areas. So I did a lot of trauma
Mhm.
and a lot of cardiac. I did some medical, I did some surgical, I did mostly trauma and cardiac, and I did some ICU, and I worked with babies and children.
A good career. So we're going to go on to your fourth book because we're moving up in your life and then we can keep it synced with your books. So what's your fourth book? We shall return to the subject.
Okay, well, 14 years of age, and you got these teenage hormones start flowing around, and I fell in love with a love story.
Oh, yes.
I think I fell in love with the idea of being in love because I really didn't know what love was, but I fell in love with love. So I was a freshman in high school, and I had a lot of crushes, which I can I can laugh about them now, and some of them were on teachers. I didn't do anything, but my freshman year was different. I had the hormone things going, and I dreamed of what my wedding would be like, and I would sketch out how I wanted my wedding dress to look. I've always liked doing the visual arts too, so that was part of my thing. So I would draw out these dresses, and then I'd say, okay, then I'd want something different done, and it was just something that I could do. And I wanted to have a boyfriend, but I was too shy to really talk to the guys. So I hung back and all that. Didn't really do too much. Actually, I think it was more we were talking current events, if anything. We had Watergate was going on everywhere. Nixon resigned.
Mm.
It was just taken over. We still had the bell bottoms. We had stacked shoes.
Oh, yes.
I mean, really stacked shoes.
Platform shoes. I did
Yes.
too.
Oh, we had platforms, and we had mini skirts.
Uh-huh.
We did have that. And I learned how to sew. Actually, starting in 7th grade, I learned how to sew more than what I did in the past, which would be Barbie doll clothes and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I started making my own dresses and things that buying the fabrics that I like, mm-hmm. because I was babysitting, and then I was bringing in some money so I could actually go and buy a pattern and get some thread and fabric and put it together.
And wasn't that lovely feeling? I used to love going to choose fabric. I remember the Rose and Hubble fabrics would come in, but I don't know whether it's just or everybody used to sew more then, or it was just because I'd learned at school, but I just loved going out to buy. The lovely thing of having a new pattern and choosing your fabric. It was wonderful, wasn't it?
It was absolutely wonderful. I had one dress, no kidding, I had one dress that I made that I was so in love with. Mm. It had a little puff sleeves, and it had a sweetheart neckline, and it was a flared skirt, and it was floral, and it reeked the 1970s. And it was like during 1 month, I wore that dress like 2 times each week because I loved it. I did. That's crazy, but I did it for about a month. And then I slowed down. In
those days, we didn't have so many clothes. I remember I shared a tiny, tiny wardrobe with my younger sister, tiny wardrobe. It probably is like a nursery wardrobe. And we probably had like 3 or 4 nice outfits. We just wore the same thing again and again and again. And when you bought something new, that was kind of like the only thing that you had, because you just didn't keep buying new clothes then, did you?
Well, I never shared clothes with my sisters, so
I didn't share clothes
because we wore different sizes.
No, we just shared the actual wardrobe they went in. I mean, we just didn't have very many clothes. Because
exactly.
in those days you didn't expect to have loads and loads of clothes. It was different.
Yeah, it was crazy. There were, and back in grade school, and all girls, they had to wear dresses, no pants. It was always dresses. There was like a dress code thing, but then by the time I hit my freshman year, and actually before then, when I was in junior high, when I hit 7th grade, I was able to wear pants to school and things. And I remember that my parents would go out, and if there was a, say there was a double knit shirt and pants that went together or bought as a set, then say it was in blue and had checks on it, then she would buy 3 of the colors in the same size. And then that's what that child had for new clothes.
Mm.
That was not my new clothes, but it was my older sister's new clothes. She did that several times for her. And that's just, I don't know, it's different.
Oh.
Life was different way back then.
It was. But I do remember those lovely platform shoes. And I remember being out with my brother and buying a pair. And mine were brown and orange. And I knew my mum was going to go crazy. And my older brother said, go on, just buy them, just buy them. And I adored those shoes, but they were ridiculously big. And I think my mum, she didn't go crazy. She said all the right noises, but I think she kind of recognized how I was so in love with them, and she let me enjoy them.
Yeah, when I was a freshman, my mother left my father. She divorced him.
Oh.
And at 14, I got to choose who I wanted to live with. And so did my sister, older sister, and we chose to live with my father. We wanted to continue in the town that we were in, going to school, the high school we were at. We didn't want to move. And then my mother took all the other kids with her. So like my youngest sister never knew any school in our hometown other than the school in another town where she had moved. And so they don't have that connection with the hometown like I did.
Did you feel, although you must obviously have been really upset your parents are splitting up, but it must have been the first time that you didn't have to take responsibility for all your siblings as well?
No, I didn't have to take responsibility for them. True.
Did you miss
However,
them? Did you miss them terribly?
Well, I saw them in the summertime. I was there in the summertime. I would go and visit. When I wasn't working, I was actually working a lot of, I was a waitress, so I was doing a lot of work, and I was also cooking at home because somebody needed to. I would cook my father his eggs the way he liked them, and I would cook fried chicken because my brother would bring it home to the house. And so I just started doing a lot of the cooking at the house.
It seems like you went from having to play the mother role to your siblings to having to play the wife role to your father.
I did, but it helped feed everybody, and it's what I did. But I worked part-time as a waitress. So at that point in time, neither my mother or my father bought clothes for me for school. None. Zip, nada, nothing. I bought everything myself with the money that I earned waiting on tables.
You're a good girl. Should we go on to your 5th book?
Okay, so we're going to go a little different here. People were talking about this book, and so I thought, okay, I have to read it. And The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. So at this point in time, I was a senior in high school. 17, I was almost 18. And although I was loving my love stories and all these other things, because I was always reading Harlequin books and stuff, but this book came out, completely new genre, and it found its way into my reading because I wanted to know what the kids were talking about. So what am I going to do? I'm going to read it. So I read it. And I don't read a lot of horror novels still, but I do appreciate the genre as such. I do appreciate that. Paranormal happening with the family in that particular book scared me. That did scare me a lot. But it was different, and I knew what the kids were talking about, and I could partake of those conversations. So that was really helpful. So I left my little box or whatever of what I always read, genres, and explored something new. was different.
And did you, after that, did you read any other books like that, or was that a one-off move from genre?
I have read probably 10 horror books in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a one-off, but it's not far from it. This year, actually, so far this year, I've read like 98 books. So
You, gosh.
I read a lot. I read a lot. I blog a lot about the books. If the book is a book that my blog is family friendly, so there are things that I won't blog on it. And, that I'll read and I'll review and I'll promote for other authors, indie authors on social media. But I love blogging about books and what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was amazed by. It was great.
Well, you're very supportive to other writers in the writing community.
And I was also a senior. I was a senior, and graduation was coming. So it was, it was really great. And I remember that summer after I graduated, Star Wars had come out and we had a drive-in theater. I remember taking my siblings to the drive-in theater 7 times to see the first Star Wars movie.
I went to
It was crazy.
Yeah. And when did you decide to be a writer?
Okay, back in 1990, my youngest son was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh.
And which is where When Angels Fly, this book, it has a painting of my son on it.
Oh.
With angel wings.
Did you do the painting?
Actually, I did part of it, and then another person did part of it too. So it was a combination.
Oh. Okay.
And so When Angels Fly, and it's a multi-award winning memoir. It's been read everywhere. That's my first book that I wrote. As far as in my adult years, what I did was, he had a bout with cancer. It was horrible. And he did die.
I'm sorry.
But when I was no longer able to work as a nurse, I started reading back through. I came across my journals that I had kept during the time when he was sick. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put these into digital format for my living child so that he would have something could read back on and not try to read through my scribbled handwriting. And so I did that, and I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? I'm doing my art. I'm doing what I can, but I don't have a job. There's just not a lot I can do because I can't breathe. And I can't breathe in humidity, so I can't do a lot of things. So I'm home a lot at the time. So then I thought, okay, I'll put it into book form. I'll put it into a book. And that's what I did. I did do that. And it helps, what it does is a true memoir and everything. Of course, the names and places are changed, but there are many things that it helps. It helps women who are in an abusive situation get out of it, and I was one. I was one of those, and I got out of it too.
Experiencing an abusive relationship at the same time that you were losing your son. That's horrendous.
And not very far from losing my first son. He strangled on his umbilical cord. So it was a bad time. But the book isn't only, yes, sure, there's sad moments and things in it, but it's not only that, okay? My book helps teach women and men, because men can be abused too, how to get out of that relationship, resources, what they can do. It teaches parents to advocate for their sick child in the hospital. For instance, if your child is 1 hour late in getting an antibiotic that's IV and it's not there, don't worry about it, because there are things going on in that nursing unit you don't know what's going on. Whereas if your child is needing pain medicine and they're 30 minutes and they haven't been there, then that's something that you want to address. So you have to pick and choose your battles so you don't alienate the nursing staff, the doctors, and those kind of things. But you do have to advocate for your child. not every parent knew how to do that, and this book helps them learn
Good.
the things. Yes.
And you went on to do educational books for children and parents as well, didn't you?
Okay, so then when I finished that one, I thought, okay, now what? I'm a one-book author. That didn't happen. And then I started thinking about kids and being the bullying things that were going on. So I wrote The Big Cheese Festival, and that's a book on bullying. And so I have a Stubby Mouse, little mice are in the book, and they're really cute. And he's called Stubby Mouse because he's got half a tail. And so it really helps kids understand what calling other kids names or teasing them in not a nice way. It really helps kids with bullying. And then I wrote, okay, what's going to come after that? Because now maybe I'm on a roll. So I wrote Suzy Has a Secret. Suzy Has a Secret has minimal illustrations on each page, minimal detailed illustrations. There's still illustrations on each page. Using the swimsuit rule, and it's recommended for people to read the back, for parents and educators to read the back so they can gear the book to the age of their child and the maturity level of their child. And that said, then for the most part, you can use a teddy bear or doll or something. You can use the swimsuit rule. So for good touch, bad touch. And it explains a situation where a child's uncle was touching them and tickling them where they didn't, and the child didn't feel very good about it. And it came out on a playground at school. They were talking to another child, and that's how it came out. And then the older brother overheard, and then they went to Hicks. The older brother said, you have to tell mom and dad. Tell them what is going on and how it would all be directed back to the parents, and that you're okay, you're not in any trouble. You're okay. Because kids need to know, because they're scared they're going to be in trouble because threats are used against them by the perpetrators. And so it's really important. It's been a multi-award winning book. We were silver medalists in Miami on that one. And I say we because S. Jackson and A. Raymond. A. Raymond is my husband, and because he would offer insights. He hasn't written any of these, but he would offer insights, but they're actually, I just want him involved on it. So his name, if his name is there.
Generous. That's really generous of you to put his name on the books.
All the illustrations, everything that's talked, that's all me. So,
and you did the illustrations yourself, did you?
Oh yeah, everything's me. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well done. Well, congratulations. A life well lived. Thank you. You've certainly been through it all, but you've given so much back and achieved so much.
Thank you. I did put out a book this year called Her Heart, and this one is by Mary Schmidt, SCHMIDT. It's titled Her Heart.
Yeah.
Her Heart.
Yeah.
It has a beautiful cover. This is a cabin. I painted this.
I'm trying to see it, but there's lights reflecting. But you know what? I'm going to put the link on the web page when I give the information about the books you've chosen.
See if that's better or not.
That's better.
It's a winter setting.
Yeah, it's
beautiful. It's a cabin on a lake.
It's gorgeous.
Her Heart. It's the sequel to my first book, and this one is a romance, finding love. And so it's me, and it's my husband, even though he wasn't a doctor. He's not a doctor, but it has my husband in it. So it's a memoir, and it has my son in it, myself, and my husband, with my husband playing a different character as far as work and everything. So that's different.
So you've written yourself a happy ending in the sequel to your earlier book.
I had a happy ending.
Yes.
I have a happy ending.
That's lovely. It's a really good point to finish on. But all of the books will be, viewers, listeners can find links to all of your books under the different author names, because I'm going to put a link on the website. So they will be able to look that up.
A really good way to go to any of the books is just to go to whenangelsfly.net, whenangelsfly.net, and from there they can go to children's books, memoirs, poetry, and that kind of thing. And they can, because I have poetry books too, and they can go to any book in that list. It's a drop-down list. So whenangelsfly.net, they can find anything.
It will be on the website. Thank you. So I've got one last question to ask you, and that is, which luxury will you take with you on the island?
Oh, I probably wrote that down. I don't remember.
Yeah, I caught you now.
Probably something with music. I think I would like music because music. So whether it's an iPod or whatever it is with lots and lots of batteries, I would like to have some music because that's not something that would be on an island. And I would also spend time with just the sounds of the island and hiking and that kind of thing of nature, because that is huge and that's big, and God is great and he made many things. So
you'll probably be painting as well.
Probably.
I think you're the kind of woman who'll make the most of any situation, however challenging, and I admire you for it. So you shall survive that island and you shall make it beautiful.
Oh, I would take dead limbs and things. Yes, for sure. I would make different things and paint. Yes, I would. I would probably make some of my own paints because I could do that. And there's ways of making a brush too. So
talented woman.
Be resourceful and think about what you're wanting to do. And it's not that hard, or not for me anyway.
Fantastic. It's been an absolute delight talking to you, Mary, and meeting you. Thank you for sharing your life with us and your book choices.
Thank you for inviting me and having me on here. I really appreciate that. I'm grateful and thankful.
Pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's episode of Castaway Books. References for all of the books discussed in this show can be found on my website, which is www.abrakdeborah.wordpress.com. It's the letter K and then my name, Deborah, Deborah. So until next week, goodbye.